I'd like to share with you something nice in this week's Parsha, Emor, from the Rebbe's father, Rabbi Levi Yitzchok Zatzal. This week's Parsha speaks all about the Yom Tovim. When it comes to the verses about Rosh Hashanah, the Gemara in Daf Chav Tesam at Beis in Mesichta Rosh Hashanah, it says over there, Yom Tov Rosh Hashanah Shechale is b'Shabbos. If Rosh Hashanah fell on a Shabbos, we do not blow shofar, only in the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara wants to find out the reason. Why don't I blow shofar on Shabbos? You know, a shofar is not like an instrument I'm going to fix. So what's the issue? What's the problem blowing a shofar on Shabbos? First, the Gemara thought there's verses for it. It says Zichrin Trua, you should only remember. But then the Gemara says, but what's the problem? There's no malacha, there's no work. Comes Rava, and he says the famous thing, that really seems like Minat Torah you're allowed to. No problem. Hashem says you could do it. But what? It's a Gezerah de Rabban. It's a decree from the sages. Why? Sheme Yavirenu Daladam B'Shusarabim. Maybe you're not going to know how to blow shofar. And you're going to want to find out, you're going to take the shofar and you're going to walk in a public domain 4 cubits, Daladamas, and you'll be over, you're going to transgress the laws of Shabbos. So because we're concerned you're going to transgress Shabbos, therefore you don't blow the shofar on Shabbos. So it's a gezerah, it's a decree from the sages. They so to say, they like made it up. And there's a very famous question in Chassidus. If it's a biblical law, Hashem's law to blow shofar on that day, Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the year, how could a rabbinic decree take away a positive commandment from Hashem, a biblical commandment? How could a rabbinic law override a biblical law? Comes Rabbi Yitzchok and he has a novel explanation and also how he learns the verse. Very interesting thing. The verse says like this in the pasuk. It says by Rosh Hashanah, Dubov and Yisrael Hashem tells Moshe Ben, go and tell the Yidden, Lema, so to say, the 7th month when he came out of Egypt on the first day of the month, look at these words. It should be to you a day of rest. Zichron Teruah. You should remember the Teruah. There is an explanation. What does it mean, Zichron Teruah? That you should remember the blowing of the shofar by saying the verses, like we say in Musaf and Rosh Hashanah, but not the actual blowing. Comes Rabbi Yitzchok, he has a very deeper pshat, and he says like this. This concern that we have, that you may carry it in Rishus HaRabim, you won't know how to blow. It's not that the sages initiated or thought of it and introduced it. No. Hashem himself in the pasuk was the one who alerted us about that concern, and that's why the sages only took it a step further. And this is how Rabbi Yitzchok learns the pasuk. Hashem tells a Jew, it's Rosh Hashanah, and it fell out on Shabbos. So Hashem says, I trust you. What should you do that in order that you shouldn't violate the Shabbos, you shouldn't carry it in a public domain? I'm giving you advice, Hashem says, I trust you. What should be? It's a day of rest, Shabbosoin. So I'm telling you, Zichroin, remember. What should you remember? 2 things. Remember the word before Zichroin, remember the word after Zichroin. Remember that it's Shabbos, so you won't carry it in public domain. And remember also to learn how to blow Teruah well. So Hashem says in the Bible, in the Torah, Shabbos and Zichron Teruah. I trust every Jew. I want you to remember that it's Shabbos because you're not allowed to carry on Shabbos. And if you're not going to learn well the knowing how to blow, you may come to transgress the laws of Shabbos. And therefore Hashem says, I'm telling you guidance, Zichron. Remember how to blow well. And therefore you won't have to come to ask any sage how to blow the shofar. You won't come to carry it in the public domain. So Hashem himself was the one who said, I trust you. But remember, there is the laws of Shabbos, and therefore you have to know that at Shabbos you better not to blow well. When the sages saw that unfortunately there were some that weren't familiar so well with the shofar, and they transgressed on Shabbos, So therefore the sages say that we are only following Hashem's concern, but He Himself introduced. That from a biblical perspective, Hashem says, I trust every Jew, and therefore I allow you to blow the shofar, because I know there will be the zichor and the remembering of the shofar and also of Shabbos. But when the sages saw that it was lacking, so they said, no, if that's the case, we're not the ones who are making this up. We're only reinforcing what Hashem Himself in the Bible alerted to us and wanted us to be cautious about. And since we're not so careful, therefore we are only implementing that which Hashem originally introduced in the pasuk himself. So according to this, Rabbi Levi Yitzchok has such a beautiful this pshat in the pasuk, where the pasuk zikrin true is not going just to remembering the verses. It's talking to the person. Hashem said, I trust you, but I'm concerned that you better remember what to do. When the sages saw that they weren't keeping well, they said, no, now we have to reinforce this what Hashem Himself was concerned about, and therefore they made a rule that we're going to follow Hashem's wish, that if you're going to transgress Chas v'Shalom, there is such a fear, then you should not blow the shofar on Shabbos, and therefore this is not something that the sages made up. This is actually in the pasuk itself. Hashem Himself brought this to our attention, that we should be careful on the Shabbos, and therefore on Shabbos we only have the verses, the Zikrin Truah, and this explains the answer in a very, very beautiful way. Have a good Shabbos.